Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson is ruling out a third-party run. The presidential hopeful says all of the candidates had a bad night during last week's debate, and that's the reason she will not be dropping out of the race.
In an op-ed published in the Washington Post, Williamson criticized the DNC, saying, "The Russians are messing with our elections, ? Absolutely, but so are we. The old days of political backroom deals are back." She joins us now via Skype to expand on this. Welcome back to Rising, Ms. Williamson. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's so great to see you, too. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So just tell us a little bit about, you said everybody on the stage had a bad night, and you think you're making the best case. You're in Dubuque, Iowa right now. Why are you staying in this race, Ms. Williamson?
First of all, when I say everybody had a bad night, I'm not criticizing the candidate's performance. I'm talking about the entire system. You know, the way the moderators throw questions at people and they have a few seconds to answer, and some people anyway, feel that they're set up to attack the others. That, to me, is not the way American politics should work. I find the whole issue of the debates and the polls and all of that as a way that the DNC, and joined in some ways by their corporate media partners, are dictating rather than facilitating the process of democracy. When I'm here in Iowa, when I'm in New Hampshire, when I'm in South Carolina and Nevada and in California, that's a different political universe. That's where people are actually talking to the voters. This whole idea of using the debates to kind of narrow things down. The primaries should narrow things down. That's what elections are for. So my criticism is not of the candidates themselves. My criticism is of the entire situation. And, some people say, well, you're a sore loser. But look how you lose in this situation. You lose because of and the way you lose, if you lose, is all the institutional barriers to rising if you're not one of the people who are part of that establishment class, really, and group of people. It's wrong. It's undemocratic.
Well, and Marianne, if you had been on the stage that night, what might you have said? And also, we talked here about, we didn't think the moderators did a very great job either. What sort of things do you think that they missed? What should they have asked the candidates about?
Well, the way the moderators talk, it's always, one of the pillars of my campaign is this idea that we're only talking about the symptoms. We're not talking about the deeper dynamics. We're not talking about the deeper causes of our problems. That's why I'm saying I'm not criticizing the candidates themselves, because they have to answer the questions that are thrown at them. And the questions that are thrown are all on the level of the symptom. How are you going to pass a policy that treats the symptom? But if we're not having a deeper conversation, Crystal, this is how we got to where we are. Last time, I think that the Republican Party was gobsmacked by Trump and the Democratic Party was gobsmacked by Bernie Sanders, because neither one of them had the capacity, apparently, to see underneath the waterline, to recognize where people really are. And so, to me, the conversations that we're having, I'll give you an example, okay? There's a lot of conversation about the middle class, right? Working families and the middle class. What about the poor? What about the poor in America? The political establishment doesn't even talk about 93 million people who live near poverty, 100,000 homeless children in the United States, 13 million hungry, food insecure children in the United States. Why doesn't it talk about them? Because they don't vote. But, my experience of life is just because somebody's poor doesn't mean they're stupid. And so we're not talking about poverty. We're not talking about the trauma of children. We're not having any conversation that speaks to the deeper, roiling dynamics of what's going on among millions and millions of people in the United States in 2019.
Marianne, I would say it's not that they don't vote, it's that they don't donate to campaigns and they don't buy as many products that the corporate media is selling. I mean, honestly, I think that means money is power in America, and that's the reality.
And that's how corrupt the whole thing is. And I find that the corruption lies in the consciousness of the American people. I'm a fan of the American people. I think we're fine. I think that the average American is dignified and decent and tries to live a good life. But I think that the political establishment that I've been talking about and the way you just described it, Crystal, is not worthy of the goodness of the American people.
Yeah, and so, Ms. Williamson, I know you also, took issue with Hillary Clinton's jab at Tulsi Gabbard, saying the Democratic establishment has got to stop smearing women it finds inconvenient. The character assassination of women who don't toe the party line will backfire. Stay strong, Tulsi Gabbard. You deserve respect, and you have mine. Why is it, do you think, that the establishment is trying to smear both you and Tulsi Gabbard?
Because we're not in the club. Last time it has to be Hillary. And I feel that if they just if the DNC had taken their fingers off the scale last time, it would have either been Hillary or it would have been Bernie. but we would have all felt like we had an honest election. And I think all Democrats would have shown up and Trump would not be president today. Today, we're watching a car crash in slow motion because it's the same thing. Last time, it had to be her. And I like Hillary, by the way. This is not a criticism of Hillary herself. So last time it has to be Hillary. This time, we're an open process, they say. It can be one of these six. And if it's not people in their club, in terms of their donors, in terms of their constituency as they define it, whether it's me getting smeared with all that Crystal Lady wacko stuff, anti-science, anti-medicine that came down 3 days right after my debate performance, the second debate performance, creating this image that, of course, mischaracterizes, marginalizes, mocks, or what they're doing to Tulsi. Any person who doesn't toe the line. And hello, yes, I am pointing out, isn't it interesting that they're both women? And also, I'll tell you something else. Not only both women who don't toe the party line, but specifically don't toe the party line and are not even talking about the military-industrial complex.
That's a great point. I mean, what do you think of impeachment and how this is going for Democrats? I mean, you talk about how we're treating the symptoms of the problem, we're not talking about the problem itself. Do you think that this impeachment process is getting at the problem itself?
Well, the impeachment process is constitutionally dictated, and it does have to do with policy. So if you're going to talk about the problem itself, that has to do with the deeper dynamics that produced Donald Trump to begin with. But in terms of the impeachment process, I do support it. They have to go forward. There's too much that's happened that's too perilous, not only to our democracy, but possibly to people around the world in this man's behavior.
Yeah, and so, Ms. Williamson, final question for you. Well, who are the other candidates in the race, do you think, that are being marginalized, aside from yourself and Tulsi Gabbard?
Well, I think to some extent, Andrew's hanging in there because he's been able to raise the money, and they're kind of begrudgingly kind of letting him in more. But there's this definite, even the word outsider is so interesting to me, because outside what? There's not supposed to be this political elite. But political parties aren't even mentioned in the Constitution. To be qualified to run for president, according to the Constitution, you have to be 35 or older, born here, and have lived here for 14 years. So this idea that only people, the Constitution, if they wanted to say, had to have been a congressman, had to have been a senator, had to have been a governor, then they would have. And they didn't for a reason. They were leaving it to every generation to determine for itself the skill set most necessary to navigate the times in which we live. Even someone like Tom Steyer, they will accept a billionaire businessman as kind of one of them. But, Franklin Roosevelt said that the primary responsibility of the presidency, he said the most important role, he said, is not the administrative aspect, but moral leadership. We have good political mechanics. We have that. But what the country most needs now in a president who can surround him or herself with great political mechanics is political vision. And yet the concept of a political visionary, somebody who says it's not enough to just talk about the mechanics of the car, we have to talk about what road we're on. That's when you become disruptive. That's when you become inconvenient. And that's when the establishment does whatever it feels it needs to do to make sure you're way over on the side and no one takes you seriously.
Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Coming up, The Intercept's Ryan Grimm sat down for an exclusive interview with Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And he's giving us a first look at what AOC said about her endorsement of Vermont Senator When Rising continues.